You're listening to GOAZCATS.com today, a podcast all about your Arizona Wildcats. Featuring the latest news and analysis from the staff at GOAZCATS.com. Plus, interviews with players, coaches, and expert guests from across the Rivals.com network. Now, straight from the old Pueblo, Tucson, Arizona, here's the host of GOAZCATS.com today, Matt Moreno.
Well, happy Monday, everybody. Oh, it's a little bit gloomy tonight in Tucson as the last of monsoon 2019 kind of makes its way through town. But other than that, a happy Monday. Obviously, a very happy Monday for Arizona as they get back to work during the bye week. But they get their big win against Texas Tech on Saturday night. After all that buildup, after all the negativity and criticism, and people not having a lot of confidence in this team, Arizona ends up and goes out and wins a game against Texas Tech and does it by using its defense. And that's the group that, is going to get all the attention and get all the praise because it was just so unexpected to see that group come up and be the ones to make the difference in the game and really control the game for Arizona in the 28-14 win over the Red Raiders. Very unexpected. I mean, I don't know that anybody outside of, that defense thought that they could do what they did to that offense. It came in as one of the top 10 offenses in the country. Obviously, I had kind of pointed out before the game, and I think a lot of people did. It wasn't just me that Texas Tech hadn't really played anybody, and the opponent wasn't great leading up to the Arizona game. And I think that's where a lot of Texas Tech fans were at least a little bit cautious about that game and why it kind of ended up working out the way it did, with it being such a close kind of point spread coming into the game. It was really kind of essentially worked out to be a pick'em game, and ended up going in Arizona's favor, and they win it by 14 points. The offense kind of struggles a little bit, but gets going towards the end of the game, really imposes its will towards the end of the game down the stretch, and really makes a difference. Being able to run the ball effectively, eat up a lot of the clock, make differences in that way, and it really just it helped this defense stay off the field and stay fresh for one, but just have some confidence, and it was everybody working together on Arizona's side, and I think that's why they can be happy with how they ended that game, how they won that game. Proved a lot of people wrong. Proved me wrong. I thought it was going to be a lot more high scoring. I think a lot of people did. I don't know if anybody had it as low scoring as it ended up being, but that's a credit to the defense and Marcel Yates, who has come under a lot of fire. Not only this season, but going back further than that. So he's someone who's really had a lot of confidence in the defense and had trust that they can get the job done. The players have a ton of trust in him and what he does, and they said all last week that it was just going to be a few minor tweaks that needed to be made, and a few guys doing things a little bit differently that would make the difference. And lo and behold, that's kind of what happened. Arizona was able to kind of stick to the game plan. I thought they had a really good game plan coming into it. Really didn't look unprepared, and that's something that we've seen a lot from this team, is that they've looked unprepared at times, and especially in that Hawaii game. And everybody, that was the big kind of topic of conversation after that game, was how could they have so many months to get ready for a team like Hawaii, who's not a Power 5 school, and have that performance that they did, giving up as many points as they did, and having it really look ugly at times. And I thought they looked very prepared, and it was almost the opposite of what happened against Hawaii, when Hawaii's offensive players were bragging that they knew what was coming from Arizona's defense and everything they prepared for, they saw. I thought Arizona's defense could say the same thing about Texas Tech, where, it looked like they were so prepared that they knew what was coming, and just felt like they weren't surprised by anything. And that's a big deal for this defense, considering, where it's come from and the criticism it's taken so far this season. And, for Marcel Yates, who's been so much under fire, it's kind of one of those games where even the biggest detractors that he's had and fans who want to see him go, you couldn't deny what he did for that team to get them ready for the game against Texas Tech and what the results were. I mean, there was a lot of standout players who did their part, but I thought the game plan was on point and it was what it needed to be to accomplish a win in this game against Texas Tech. And I thought it was a big deal to see that. Kind of quiets some of that talk with him, and now they can move forward and get ready for the start of Pac-12 play, get ready for UCLA in a couple weeks, and then you have Colorado after that, which are winnable games, and then you're getting into the difficult part of the schedule, but you could be, having some momentum when you go into that part of the schedule and, have a couple wins under your belt and feel good about where you're at as a team, and even that much closer to getting back to a bowl game, which is where they want to be this season. And we'll kind of see what it all means as they move forward. But as we get into this week's episode, I wanted to kind of change things up a little bit just because it is a bye week. Like I mentioned, Arizona's back at practicing Monday night, and they'll continue to practice the rest of this week, but there is no media availability. Kevin Sumlin didn't have his normal Monday press conference. There will be no player media availability this Tuesday like there usually is during a game week. So it's going to be a little bit more of a quiet week, a little bit laid back week, but we definitely want to break down everything we saw Saturday night and get a better feel for this team and kind of gather our thoughts after, a surprising performance by the defense and Arizona getting back on top, getting back over 500 this season after that early season loss to Hawaii and really having its most convincing win of the year easily and one of the more, important games for Kevin Sumlin in his short career at Arizona. So as we get into this week's episode, one thing I want to do is take a look back at Saturday night, go back to some of the comments we heard after the game, since that will be the last we hear of the players for a little bit, and Kevin Sumlin. So to start off, got to start with the defense. Colin Schooler was one of the player representatives that was brought in to talk to the media after the game. He had a solid game himself, but he talked a lot about kind of what changed and what was different about this group Saturday night as opposed to the start of the season. And with him, and it was clear that he was not happy with hearing the things that they had to hear over the last week, and that was pretty clear talking with the players last week anyways, that they were tired of hearing about the Texas Tech offense and how good it was and how Arizona was the underdog and how their coach needed to be fired. They got tired of hearing all those things, and it was very clear when talking with him last week. And Colin Schooler kind of had something to say about that you'll hear next as you hear from him. But also he talked about just kind of the things they were doing schematically and kind of what changed about this group, including using more linebackers on the field and just the way they were able to game plan for Texas Tech and be effective on that side of the ball. So here he is talking about that, and I'll come back with some more comments after you hear from him.
It's always nice giving up 14 points in a win, but there's still a couple things we can clean up, take away some of the big plays. Those are kind of momentum swingers, but I like the way that we battled tonight. I like the way how when they did have big plays, we kind of quieted it down and played well in the red zone.
What is the advantage of that look that you guys brought with all three linebackers on the field?
Well, each linebacker that we have on the field tonight, we brought something different to the table. So it wasn't something that they could run a scheme and would stop everybody. We always had that going on. But with that tempo of offense, there's a lot of tendencies that we saw, which was helping us play fast. And basically, we played sound defense tonight with that. It was a really good overall win. You saw, every phase of the game, we were pretty much dominating. And we made big plays when we needed them.
How much of a motivational factor was all the criticism that you guys had been receiving, plus all the criticism that your coordinator had been receiving?
We have a big sign in front of our locker room that says it's about us. So when we hear people talk and gossip and get on social media and talk about us, it doesn't matter. It's outside of this building, there's really not much that matters here. And I think tonight we showed a lot of people that they could be wrong about how we play and how our future is going to look.
As you heard from Colin Schooler, one of the things Arizona did was kind of limit the plays after the big plays. Texas Tech was able to move the ball. TJ Vasher was a problem for Arizona defensively, but they were able to avoid kind of having those plays turn into points, and I think that was a big thing for Arizona in this game to do. When you talk about what they needed to do to limit the defense or limit the Texas Tech offense, it was eliminating some of those explosive plays that they've given up to other teams, and they worked hard on that, and they were able to get the job done, and it really proved to be a good thing for Arizona to overcome that. Took a team effort, and as Colin Schooler mentioned, there are things that they still need to improve on, need to get better at, but overall it was just a great performance for the defense to only give up 14 points to a team that was scoring 41 a game. And obviously, like we mentioned, and I've mentioned a few times, the numbers for Texas Tech weren't indicative of kind of who they really are. I think we saw that, and obviously Alan Bowman, we learned the news Monday that he's going to be out for several weeks with the shoulder injury that he suffered in the game against Arizona. He took a strong hit from Tony Fields the second during that game and had to leave the game, went to the locker room, but came back and finished it out, but showing his toughness. But he's going to miss several weeks, and so he clearly wasn't at his best. But still, Arizona was the one who kind of made all of that happen for them and made it difficult for them to score points and get in the end zone, and that's really to their credit, because that has been an issue for this team the first couple games, and it wasn't against Texas Tech Saturday night. So credit goes to them for getting the job done, and for Marcel Yates for coming up with a good game plan to, limit those problems. There were a lot of things that Arizona did schematically that, made a difference, but in the end it comes down to the players and how well they're able to execute what the game plan is. And I thought we all saw it. Someone who really stood out was Lorenzo Burns. He made a lot of plays, and he still gave up quite a few passes or catches rather, and gave up quite a few yards, but he was another one who didn't give up, that big play, that back-breaking play against Texas Tech. And I thought even more notable than that, and even when you factor in, the yards he gave up when, he was in coverage and some of the catches he gave up, I thought the big plays that he made came at the best times. And he had 3 pass breakups and 6 tackles and an interception. By far his best game, I think, in an Arizona uniform, and they needed it from him. The defense needed it from him. They needed, everybody to step up, but in particular their cornerbacks, just in case the safeties weren't, up to par and weren't able to play as well as they, possibly could have in earlier weeks. So, but I thought for Lorenzo Burns, it was important for him to have that type of game all offseason, especially in the fall. Demetrius Martin was talking about the moment of truth with Lorenzo Burns, and I think there were a lot of times last year where we saw him go up for a ball and just not come down with it, and turns into a big play or touchdown or something like that, and there just weren't those moments in Saturday night's game. He, when he was called to action at the, to make a play at the point of attack when a ball was in the air, which is what Demetrius Martin was talking about, that moment of truth for him. Last year, I think you would have seen him. There were a lot of times where, he could have had an interception or a pass breakup and it turns into a catch because he either doesn't turn around, he just doesn't have the right placement, or just whatever. There was certain things where he just didn't live up to, making the play in that certain situation. And I thought he made all of those plays for the most part. Saturday night, he had a really big pass breakup at the end of the game when they weren't really making a big run, or they weren't really threatening to score and completely change the game. But Texas Tech was, building some momentum offensively and was moving down the field. And Lorenzo Burns came up with a big pass breakup that kind of really put things out of reach and sealed the game in a lot of ways. And I thought that was a big moment for him and a chance for him to show, the progress he's made. And that's going to be important for Arizona moving forward as they move along this season, and know that they can rely on a guy like Lorenzo Burns to do that and have that type of game. And I think that's something Kevin Sumlin mentioned after the game, and it's something I've thought and mentioned before the game as well, that Arizona was going to learn a lot more about who it was and who it could trust after the Texas Tech game. And they played a lot fewer guys than they did against NAU, really stuck to a core group of players. That doesn't mean it was all veterans. There were quite a few freshmen in there, including Christian Roland Wallace, who was in at cornerback for Jace Whitaker, who moved over to the slot. Another smart move by Marcel Yates to get that job done. They learned about that against Hawaii when they moved him into the slot, and he really shined there and was able to play more of a safety role, and really made life hard on Cedric Byrd, who was really running all over Arizona's secondary and catching passes and having a career day. Arizona learned something that day, and they put it into use against Texas Tech with Jace Whitaker covering the slot receiver and really making a difference there. But to do that, you have to have someone else who's capable of at least holding his own at the cornerback position. They turned to a freshman, Christian Roland Wallace, and he gets the job done. He wasn't, amazing. He didn't have every game-changing play, but he did his job, and he held down his side of the field and made life difficult on Texas Tech and its receivers, and that's all they could ask for from a freshman like that. And a moment of confidence for him, a chance for him to continue to grow and get better and improve, as they are going to need him more as the season moves along. But I thought overall that secondary played really well. The safeties weren't an issue like they have been in other games, and it was really a well-rounded effort from the defensive group. And they weren't able to get as much pressure as I think they would like, but Kevin Sumlin said they were able to move the pocket a little bit more and make life hard on Bowman, which is all they really need to do anyways. If your corners and your DBs and everybody else is going to play well. And then the other big move that they made was playing 3 linebackers. Anthony Pandy had a big game, and Colin Schooler and Tony Fields, those guys were at the top of the tackles list and were able to really make an impact. But playing those 3 guys together, those 3 juniors, it really made a difference for Arizona, changed some things up. Maybe it was one of those things that Texas Tech wasn't expecting to see as much, and it's something I think you'll see a lot more of moving forward. Kevin Sumlin alluded to that in his post-game press conference, and they like that they can move Anthony Pandy around. He's a flexible player who can, get after the quarterback if they need him, or drop into coverage and play the traditional linebacker role. So I think that's something you're going to see a lot more of. But again, I think this game was a lot in addition to just being a good win for Arizona. I think it taught the coaching staff a lot about what works, what doesn't work, what they need to do to have success moving forward, and that could be as important as anything else that Arizona gets out of this game and out of this weekend, going into the bye week and getting ready for UCLA in a couple weekends from now. Just a chance to really kind of build some confidence and get things moving in a positive direction from all the negativity that we've heard and seen from this group and directed at this group from fans and media and everybody. So positive end to the game for them and a chance for them to kind of move forward with everything now as they continue through the season. Now I'll let you hear from Kevin Sumlin a little bit after the game on Saturday. One of the things that he was asked about was the final drive that really kind of sealed things up for Arizona. It was a backbreaker. Not many teams are going to come back from that drive that Arizona had. It went 99 yards, took over 7 minutes, 13 plays. Gary Brightwell, is running all over the place. I think he had 8 carries on that drive alone, has the touchdown that ends it. There was still time for Texas Tech, obviously, to mount a comeback or at least try and get on the board again. But that was really a back-breaking drive for Arizona. It was all running game. They didn't look to pass on that drive, and I mentioned earlier Arizona imposing its will. I thought that was something that you saw towards the end of the game where Arizona looked like the team that was more ready for that finish than Texas Tech. Texas Tech looked a little bit tired. Their defense just didn't look like it was in the right frame of mind to stop that drive and really had issues, slowing down the running game. And I thought you saw Arizona's offensive line really start to, gain some steam towards the end of the game when they were able to wear down the defensive line from Texas Tech and just really wear down that group overall and make a difference. And so here's Kevin Sumlin talking about the running game and how that last drive came together, plus just the overall performance of everybody making it happen on the offensive side of the ball to get the running game going and have the performance they did.
It did a nice job. I think the rotation of running backs, JJ got nicked up early, and that's why we have the guys that we have, and we've been talking about the running backs. I thought, Gary came in and ran hard. Bryce Wilma, who didn't play a week ago, the unsung hero, playing tight end, doing some things, giving us an edge, cutting the backside, point of attack, and our offensive line did a nice job, and the rotation of the running backs, whether it was Gary Brightwell, whether it was Bam, JJ is going to have his turn, but that's where depth comes in, and Wiley. So, I thought our coaches had a nice plan of attack, and run it that many times and for 99 yards to win a game. That is a step that should give us some confidence going into conference play.
As you heard Kevin Sumlin mention, J.J. Taylor was a little bit banged up. He left the game for a little bit, came back in, was able to carry the ball a few more times, but they really turned to Gary Brightwell, Bam Smith, a little bit of Michael Wiley as well to finish out the game. And when you can do that, it's a big deal. And it's the reason, as Kevin Sumlin said, they have so many running backs and want to continue to have so many running backs because they want to be able to be ready for a situation like that where there wasn't a lot of drop-off from J.J. Taylor to Gary Brightwell and to, Bam Smith. They were able to continue to move things forward, continue to keep the momentum, and, really win that game with the ground game. And that's a credit to that depth, credit to DeMarco Murray and the rest of that staff that gets those guys ready, but the offensive line as well. And even heard someone mention Bryce Wilma, who came back from his injury from the week before and was able to help out in the running game and be a big piece of what they do on the ground. And it took all those parts coming together for Arizona to be able to score enough points to win the game. And those two drives, the late third quarter, early fourth quarter drive that ended with a Gary Brightwell touchdown, the fourth quarter drive that ended with a Gary Brightwell touchdown, took, I think, about 15 minutes off the clock or something like that, or close to it at least, maybe 13. But it was just one of those instances where Texas Tech just didn't have enough. You could see that they were kind of on their heels a little bit more, and Arizona just kind of kept going to it, and that's to Arizona's credit. They changed the game plan a little bit more, went a little bit more run heavy, which is playing to their strength. And again, that's going back to the coaching staff learning what works, what doesn't work. I thought you could kind of see it happen in real time with Noel Mazzoni kind of understanding, okay, this is what's going to work. We know we have the backs that are capable of running this style, continuing to work the ground game, and even with Khalil Tate, who we'll get to next, just work on the ground and do what they do best, and that's what this team is built to do. They're not necessarily built to be passing the ball right now 45, 50 times a game. They're built to run the ball, get as many backs involved, and work the passing game off of that, and I thought they did that well. They could have been better in the passing game, but when it mattered most, they went to what works, and that's kind of been a criticism of this group and this coaching staff, is that they haven't done that in the past. And I thought, we all saw the results of what happens when you rely on the strength of your team, and that was a win against a Power 5 team. So for Arizona, it's good info to have moving forward, and something hopefully we'll see a little bit more of as they kind of move forward the rest of the season. Now we'll get to the last part, the most exciting part, I think, for a lot of people when they get to go watch Arizona games. But Khalil Tate is obviously the star player on offense, and guy who kind of makes everything go, and he's had his ups and downs. But I thought Saturday night was, it felt like a return to something that we've seen before. And obviously he had the big 84-yard run, touchdown run. If you go back and I've watched it a lot of times, that run, just because it's entertaining to see. But if you watch the video that was posted by Arizona Football, there's a moment in there right before he splits the defenders to kind of finally break free on that run that he had. There's a moment where he hits a different level. He hits a different gear, and you can just see it, in real time. You can see it on video, and he's just not going to be caught. And you have to remember that the guys that are chasing him are DBs, who are supposed to be your fastest guys on the team, and in most cases are the fastest guys on the field. And he just blows by them. And I thought, like I thought back at the end of the Hawaii game, that last play of the Hawaii game, he didn't get in the end zone, but I thought, to me, it looked like he showed himself something, proved something to himself. I think he showed a lot of people, but I think it was more important to himself to see that he could still be that guy who breaks away, gets in the open field, makes something out of nothing, and is able to blow by defenders. And I thought that was important to see, because early in that Hawaii game, he was a little bit more tentative. You could see it was clearly written on his face that, he didn't want to get hurt. He didn't want to put himself in that position that he was in last year when, it cost him a game against UCLA, and, cost him some development and some progress and a chance to, really be seen. So I thought that was a big confidence boost in that Hawaii game, even though he didn't, pull it out and get that extra yard to get in the end zone. But I thought you saw the results of that in the game against Texas Tech. They really kind of went to a different style. It was less about, the RPO and the types of plays that put the decision in his hands. There was a lot more design runs, a lot more opportunities for Khalil Tate, where it was, hey, this is a running play for you, you run the ball. I think when you take that kind of this decision out of his hands, it makes it a little bit easier for him to kind of just make the decision, hey, I know what I need to do, I need to run. Obviously, he had some negative moments. Running out of bounds and losing yards as opposed to just throwing the ball out of bounds is not something you want him to do. You don't want any quarterback to do that. And he did that, a few times. And so he's going to have some growth. He obviously had the interceptions that aren't good. And he wasn't perfect. I mean, especially at the start of the game, it was a slower start for him. And he mentioned that, and he mentioned, he credited the offensive line and the defense and the running backs and everybody else for picking him up when he kind of had those issues. But when he was able to break that 84-yard run, I thought that was something that, was very reminiscent of what we saw in 2017. Looked different than what we've seen, over the last year or so. And for Arizona, it's one of those things that he can build on. Now that he knows he can do it, it's something that he can continue to do. And even maybe more importantly, now that other teams know he can do that and he's willing to do it again, it might change the way that other teams kind of play Arizona now and open some other things up, whether that's in the passing game or with the running backs, and gets them going a little bit more. The threat of that is never bad for Arizona. It's going to give, opposing defensive coordinators time that they have to waste, preparing for it and focusing on it with their groups. And it's not a bad thing for Arizona that Khalil Tate is, able to run like he showed he did, like he showed he could, rather, on Saturday night.
We implemented some more run plays in this past week. We knew that would be a X factor in this game. Me using my legs a little more, so really just being coachable. Luckily my O-line did a great job in blocking that play, and it resulted in how we wanted it to.
I thought overall it was just a solid game plan for Noel Mazzoni. Again, going back to the running game with Khalil Tate thrown in there, it just adds a different element. The offensive line was really good. One thing to kind of finish off on the Khalil Tate topic that I thought was interesting was he stomped his foot in the end zone after that 84-yard run. And if you remember, it looked familiar because he used to do it a lot in that 2017 season. Every time he got in the end zone, he would kind of stomp his foot on the ground. That one was probably the most emphatic one I think I can remember seeing from Khalil Tate, and I thought there was a little bit more to that just than, hey, I'm happy to get in the end zone. I thought that was kind of all right, kind of a relief, a sigh of relief. I can do this again. I'm back, and I think that's going to be important for him moving forward. And to have that little bit of edge that he had back in the 2017 season really gives him a different feel, a different vibe to this offense. There were a lot of players who were excited about what he was able to do. They kind of tweeted stuff after the game, and I think you saw that spark ignite in the team again. And if the offense gets behind him, the defense will follow, and it could be a lot of good things for Arizona. So maybe it's not the best time to start getting excited and saying, okay, this team's going to reel off a bunch of wins, but at least there's a little bit more optimism now than there was heading into the Texas Tech game, and I think that's going to be important for Arizona as they move forward now, moving ahead. The excitement from the Texas Tech game can, only be short-lived, unfortunately, for Arizona. They do get the bye week to kind of celebrate and be happy about it, but as Kevin Sumlin stressed after the game, there is more work to do. The players stressed it as well, that there's more work to do. This is not the kind of end of the road for Arizona. They definitely don't want this to be the highlight of their season. They kind of want this to be the start of something else and a new chapter for this group after, a rough start. But for Kevin Sumlin, he talked a lot about what they have to do moving forward now to make sure that, this result that they got Saturday night is what becomes the norm and not just kind of an anomaly. So I'm going to play a little bit of what he had to say after the game, and what he talked about was, remembering what it took to get to that point Saturday night, that they were the winner in that game, and what it took to overcome a lot of the negativity. He wants them to remember that as they move forward this season, move forward this week through the bye week, next week as they get ready for UCLA. But have a listen to what he said and kind of get his thoughts on the whole situation as they now try and move forward from, a big win against Texas Tech.
We've been down this road before, and trust me, there's a lot of energy that was put into this week. These guys, to win a game in that fashion, there's some sore guys down there right now, right? So, we played 10 straight last year. Like I told you at the beginning, I'm not complaining about the 3 bye weeks. We got an opportunity right now to get healthy. School's kicked in the high gear now. We got tests, we got papers, we got exams, we got things that get our guys to take a deep breath before we get into conference play. So it comes at a good time for us. So anytime you win, you gain some confidence. But I think the message in the locker room was, right now everybody remembers this feeling, but remember what it took for this feeling. Remember what happened this week. Remember how we approached it. Remember the things that we corrected, the players corrected, the penalties, right? We had one really bad penalty, right? And it was questionable just because the whistle hadn't blown. And so, but we did some smart things tonight with staying in bounds, taking care of our business, tackling in an open field for the most part was a lot better. Just all the things that went into, this week in this game, it's a lot of, but we can be better. And, that's what the next 2 weeks are about before we get into conference play. We know a little bit more about our team and personnel-wise and what to expect. And, as coaches, we've got to put our guys in a position to be successful.
So as you heard, it's going to be about work for Arizona. I thought there was a different mentality to the team Saturday night. There was a different feel about them, a little bit more focused. Definitely saw that come out on the field when they looked more prepared. They looked more ready for Texas Tech than they did, in the other games. And I had a feeling that the opponent might pull that out of the team. They didn't want to talk about it. I asked, I think, every player last week about that and just if there was a different feeling, different vibe around practice. And they really didn't want to comment on that too much. But it was one of those things where you could just sense that there was going to be a shift in terms of mentality coming off, games against Hawaii and NAU. As much as you don't want, a team to overlook those teams and not get as excited as they are for a team like Texas Tech, it's going to happen. You're just going to have those moments where teams are just more excited to play, Power 5 opponent, know that they're going to be on, ESPN and be the only game for the most part that people are going to be watching, and it's an opportunity to shine. That's not something you want to get in the trend of doing, but for Arizona, I could always sense that it was going to be maybe similar to that, just in terms of intensity and maybe a different type of focus. I know I didn't expect to see what I saw Saturday night. I thought it was going to be a lot more high scoring. I thought Arizona's defense was still going to have struggles and not have the performance it did. But now that they're moving forward, there's going to be expectations. Now that they can do that, you're going to be expecting them to do that a lot more. And now they're going into this game against UCLA. We'll see what happens with UCLA this weekend, but you can't lose that game now. Not after what you showed against Texas Tech, knowing what Texas Tech brought to the table with their team, with their offense, especially. And you need to continue this momentum if you're Arizona. Continue to build this thing up and try and have a different season than what was maybe predicted and what maybe it looked like it was going to be at the beginning of the year just a few weeks ago. So for Arizona, it's definitely an opportunity to get better now, to focus on what worked. I'm going to be interested to see how many players get to play in the next game. Maybe it doesn't matter just because it's UCLA, and if things go right, you're going to have more opportunities. You're going to be leading that game and have a chance to get more players on the field. But one of the things I think that, as you now look back on Saturday night, that you take away is that they really stuck to a core group of players, and it'll be interesting to see if that's who they stick with moving forward, and it's just going to be a smaller group that gets an opportunity to be on the field, and kind of what happens with that. But overall, Arizona is going to get the bye week off, get a chance to kind of recuperate. Khalil Tate was even a little banged up at the end of the game. Kevin Sumlin said he's fine. J.J. Taylor got a little nicked up, as Kevin Sumlin said. I think the hope is that he'll be fine. He did come back into the game, but this time off will give Arizona a chance to get healthy, get back on its feet a little bit, and get ready for Pac-12 play, because there are some important games coming up, and if Arizona can seal up a couple more wins and ends up 4-1 by the end of the next few weeks, it's a big sign. I mean, that's a really strong turnaround for this team, and a chance to build on this season and get it back on track. And even though they're going to be going into the more difficult portion of the schedule as they get a few weeks down the road, you at least build some momentum and are feeling confident about yourself and get the conversation going in a different direction from where it's been the last few weeks. So that's all I have today. Maybe we'll have another podcast later in the week, but for now, be happy. You get to celebrate an Arizona win, and looking forward to the rest of the season now. And so thanks again for listening and joining me here today on the podcast, and have a good rest of the week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of GOAZCATS.com today. GOAZCATS.com is the totally unofficial U of A fan site and your source for University of Arizona team coverage and recruiting news.